Detective Sarah Morrison received the call at 6:34 a.m. on January 15, 2023. The words on the other end of the line were simple, direct. A fisherman had discovered human remains on Lighthouse Beach in Brookings, Oregon. In her 19 years with the Oregon State Police, Morrison had answered countless early morning calls. Fatal accidents, suspicious deaths, discoveries pulled from rivers and forests, but this one felt different the moment she hung up. As she drove toward the coast through the pre-dawn darkness, her hands trembled slightly on the steering wheel. Brookings had been her jurisdiction since 2003. And there was one case from that year she had never escaped. Amanda Price. She remembered everything. She remembered the terrified silence inside the police station. She remembered a mother collapsing into sobs. She remembered a pair of running shoes placed too neatly on the rocks to be accidental. As Morrison approached Lighthouse Beach, floodlights cut through the gray morning. Forensic teams were already on site, working around skeletal remains wedged tightly between massive boulders. The storm from the night before had violently reshaped the coastline. Rocks that hadn't moved in decades had shifted, revealing what the ocean had hidden for nearly 20 years. Morrison felt a chill that had nothing to do with the January wind. After 2 decades, Amanda Price had finally been found. And the evidence waiting beneath those rocks would lead investigators to the last person anyone in Brookings expected. The shoreline was sealed off with police tape snapping violently in the wind. Forensic anthropologist Dr. Catherine Chen knelt beside the remains, her team carefully documenting every detail. Female, mid-20s, approximately 5'4", Dr. Chen said as Morrison approached. There are signs of blunt force trauma to the skull. She's been here at least 15 years. The salt water preserved some elements, but it also destroyed a lot. Morrison crouched down. Fragments of pale pink fabric were tangled among the bones. Synthetic material. It had survived longer than cotton or wool ever could. Then she saw something else. A small silver locket. The chain was gone, but the locket itself still gleamed faintly under the forensic lights. "Photograph it," Morrison said quietly. "There might be something inside." Amanda Lynn Price was born on August 14, 1977, in Portland, Oregon. Her parents, Claire and Michael Price, were a young couple who met at the University of Oregon. Claire was an English teacher. Michael was an electrical engineer. Amanda was their only child, planned, wanted, and deeply loved. Brookings, Oregon, sat at the southern edge of the state, just 6 miles from the California border. A town of 6,000 people, built on commercial fishing, timber, and tourism. It was known for its rugged Pacific coastline, jagged rocks, and historic lighthouses standing guard against the ocean. This was a place where people trusted each other, where children rode bikes freely, where serious crime was rare. In 2001, after graduating from Portland State University with a degree in elementary education, Amanda moved to Brookings. She wanted out of the city. She wanted quiet. She wanted to belong. Amanda became a third-grade teacher at Brookings Elementary School. The pay wasn't high, but she loved the work. She believed she was building a life that mattered. She rented a small 2-bedroom cottage overlooking Lighthouse Trail with her roommate, Jennifer Walters, who worked at the local library. The two quickly became close. Weekend hikes, shared dinners, wine on the porch, and endless conversations about the future. Amanda was also a runner. She had run cross-country in high school and never stopped. Running was how she thought, how she cleared her mind. Her routine never changed. Every morning she woke at 5:45 a.m. She put on her running clothes. She laced up her pink Nike Air Max shoes. At 6:00 a.m., She stepped outside and began her 4-mile loop along Lighthouse Trail. The trail hugged the coastline, passing dramatic cliffs and leading toward the historic St. George Lighthouse, built in 1856. At that hour, the trail was nearly empty. Just a few fishermen, occasionally a tourist who couldn't sleep. Amanda loved that sense of safety, that familiarity. Her neighbors could practically set their watches by her. Walter Hayes certainly did. From his cottage porch, he often watched Amanda pass. He waved. Sometimes he suggested she stop for coffee afterward. Amanda always smiled and kept running. September 12, 2003 was a Friday. Amanda woke at 5:45, just like every other morning. From her bedroom, Jennifer heard the coffee maker. She heard Amanda moving quietly, careful not to wake her. At 5:58 a.m., the front door closed gently. At 6:02 a.m., Tom Bradford, a 68-year-old retired fisherman, saw Amanda jogging along Lighthouse Trail. "Good morning, Mr. Bradford," Amanda called out as she always did. Tom waved back, watching her blonde ponytail swing behind her, her pink jacket catching the early light. He didn't know it then, but he was the last person to see Amanda Price alive. Jennifer woke at 7:30 a.m. Amanda should have been home by 7:15. She always was. At first, Jennifer brushed off the worry. Maybe Amanda had slowed down. Maybe she stopped to talk to someone. By 8:00 a.m., the unease became real. Jennifer called Amanda's cell phone. It rang. On the kitchen counter. Amanda never took her phone when she ran. At 8:30 a.m., Jennifer got in her car and drove Amanda's route herself. When she reached St. George Lighthouse, her heart began to race. On the rocky beach, just above where the waves were crashing, she saw them. Amanda's pink Nike Air Max shoes. Size 7. Placed side by side. Laces tucked neatly inside. Carefully arranged. But Amanda was gone. Jennifer called 911 at 8:47 a.m. Within minutes, 2 patrol cars from the Brookings Police Department arrived. By afternoon, a full-scale search was underway. Police Chief David Thornton, 40 years old, had been chief for 10 years. Nothing like this had ever happened in Brookings. Children went missing sometimes, but they were always found within hours. An adult woman vanishing on a popular trail in broad daylight. Unheard of. Search dogs tracked Amanda's scent from the cottage, along Lighthouse Trail, straight to the shoes. And then nothing. The dogs circled, confused. "It's like the scent just disappears," the handler said. Either she went into the water, or she got into a vehicle. Thornton didn't want to believe the second option. An abduction in Brookings. By sunset, more than 100 volunteers searched beaches and wooded areas. Coast Guard helicopters flew overhead. Divers searched the water. They found nothing. That evening, Amanda's parents arrived. Claire Price struggled to stay composed. Michael Price was calm, but dangerously so. "My daughter didn't run away," he said. "She'd never leave her phone. Someone did something to her." The media seized the story immediately. Teacher vanishes on morning run. Amanda's school photo appeared on local news, then national networks. Bright blue eyes, warm smile, blonde hair. Tips poured in. Sightings in California. Sightings in Coos Bay. Every lead was followed. Every lead went nowhere. 4 days later, Brookings packed into the community center. Claire Price stood at the podium holding Amanda's photo, her voice breaking. "If anyone knows anything," she pleaded, "please come forward. Amanda is a good girl. She has her whole life ahead of her. We just want to bring her home." In the crowd sat Walter Hayes, hands folded, tears streaming down his face. After the meeting, he approached Claire. "I'm praying," he said softly, "every day." Claire thanked him, comforted by his kindness. But as days turned into weeks, hope began to fade. And the case of Amanda Price slowly began to go cold. As weeks turned into months, and months into years, the case of Amanda Price slowly slipped into silence. The FBI became involved, sending profilers to Brookings. Their assessment was blunt and deeply unsettling. Amanda was most likely the victim of a crime of opportunity. Someone had seen her on the trail, watched her routine, and acted when the moment presented itself. But the question haunted everyone. Who? And how had there been no physical evidence at all? In 2003, Detective Sarah Morrison was only 30 years old, newly assigned to the Oregon State Police. The Amanda Price case was her first major investigation, and it left a mark on her that never faded. She reviewed phone records. She questioned fishermen, dog walkers, runners, anyone who regularly used Lighthouse Trail. She rewalked the route again and again. But it was the shoes that never stopped bothering her. Why were they placed so neatly? If Amanda was attacked suddenly, why take off her shoes? If she was running from danger, why stop to arrange them? It staged, Morrison told her senior partner, Detective Luis Ramirez. Someone wanted this to look like an accident, like she fell, but it doesn't work. Ramirez agreed. This wasn't random. Someone had been watching Amanda. Someone knew her routine. Someone had planned this. One by one, everyone who regularly appeared on Lighthouse Trail was questioned. A few men had minor criminal histories, none connected to Amanda. Then there was Walter Hayes, 68 years old at the time, retired from the Navy, widowed. His wife Martha had died of cancer 5 years earlier. He lived alone in his beach cottage and was known throughout Brookings as a helpful, gentle man. He volunteered in search efforts, fixed neighbors' bicycles, taught local kids how to fish. Everyone loved Walter Hayes. "I saw her every morning," Walter told Morrison. "Beautiful girl, always smiling. I saw her that day too, around 6. Never saw her again. Terrible, just terrible." Morrison had no reason to doubt him. Walter seemed like exactly what he appeared to be, a concerned neighbor. By summer 2004, the investigation slowed. Amanda's family, with help from the community, established a $50,000 reward fund. Posters went up across Oregon. Nothing changed. In 2005, Claire Price held a funeral for her daughter. There was no body, but there was a need to say goodbye. Brookings Presbyterian Church was packed. Walter Hayes sat in the front row, tears streaming down his face. Years passed. The Amanda Price case became a cold file. Sarah Morrison was promoted and eventually became head of the Oregon State Police Cold Case Unit. She never closed Amanda's file. Every few years she reopened it, hoping new technology might bring answers. It never did. In 2015, Michael Price died of a heart attack. Claire believed his broken heart killed him. She continued living alone in Portland, visiting Brookings every September to leave flowers where Amanda had disappeared. Walter Hayes aged. By 2020, he was 85 years old, his health deteriorating. Neighbors brought him groceries, picked up his prescriptions. He was still Brookings' beloved old man. Then came the night of January 14, 2023. Meteorologists called it the storm of the century. Winds reached 85 miles per hour. Waves surged 30 feet high. Trees fell, roofs ripped away, power lines collapsed. The Pacific battered Brookings without mercy. By morning the town was scarred. But the storm had done something else. It had moved the coastline. At dawn on January 15th, Marcus Webb, a 52-year-old lobster fisherman, walked Lighthouse Beach to check his traps. The landscape was unrecognizable. Massive boulders had shifted, exposing ground no one had seen in decades. Between two rocks, something caught his eye. Something pale. Something unmistakable. Marcus approached, then staggered backward, nauseous. A skull stared upward at the gray January sky. Back on the beach, Morrison's team worked carefully. Dr. Catherine Chin cataloged every bone, fabric fragments, the silver locket. And then something else. A small plastic piece attached to hair, Dr. Chin said. "What is it?" Morrison asked. "Running earbuds," Chin replied. "Old type for an iPod shuffle, popular in the early 2000s. Morrison's heart raced. Jennifer Walters had said it years earlier. Amanda listened to music while she ran. DNA analysis took 2 days. When the results arrived, Morrison's hands trembled. The remains belonged to Amanda Lynn Price. But this was only the beginning. Dr. Chin confirmed blunt force trauma to the skull. Amanda had been struck from behind with a heavy object. Death would have been instantaneous. Then the lab made another discovery. Inside the silver locket, microscopic traces of blood. DNA was extracted. It was Amanda's. Morrison ran the profile through the national database. No match. But in 2023, law enforcement had a new weapon. Genetic genealogy. Morrison contacted Dr. Elena Vasquez, a forensic genetics expert specializing in cold cases using public databases like GEDmatch and Family Tree DNA. The DNA was uploaded. 2 weeks later, a result appeared. A third cousin match. Dr. Vasquez built a family tree, working backward then forward. A month later, one name emerged. Walter Joseph Hayes. Morrison stared at the screen in disbelief. Walter Hayes. The neighbor. The volunteer. The man who cried with the family. But science didn't lie. The blood inside Amanda's locket belonged to Walter Hayes. On March 3, 2023, Morrison arrived at Walter's cottage with a support team. Walter was 88 years old, frail, in a wheelchair, oxygen tubes running from his nose. "Mr. Hayes," Morrison said evenly, "you're under arrest in connection with the death of Amanda Price." Walter looked at her. There was a long silence. Then he bowed his head. "You finally came," he whispered. "It took too long." In interrogation, Walter confessed. For months in 2003, he had watched Amanda, obsessed over her. "She reminded me of my life," he said. "My youth, my wife Martha when she was young." That morning, he woke early and waited. He positioned himself on a secluded stretch of Lighthouse Trail. "I just wanted to talk," he claimed. "To tell her she was beautiful." Amanda panicked. She tried to push him away. Walter grabbed a rock. He struck her from behind. Instant death. He hid her body between rocks, believing no one would ever find her. He placed the shoes carefully, trying to stage an accident. "I wanted to die with her," Walter said. "But I was a coward." For 20 years he lived freely. For 20 years he attended vigils. For 20 years he cried with her family. The trial took place in June 2023. Walter Hayes pleaded guilty. The judge sentenced him to life in prison. Walter was already dying. In the courtroom sat Claire Price. "You can't give me my daughter back," she said. "But now I know, now it can end." Walter Hayes died in prison on September 3, 2023, 3 months after his conviction. He was 88 years old. Amanda Price was finally laid to rest at St. Mary's Cemetery, beside her mother, Claire. The funeral was small, private. At the service, Sarah Morrison said quietly, Amanda has found the peace she deserved. The Oregon State Police held a press conference explaining how genetic genealogy solved the case, a technique now responsible for closing dozens of cold cases across the country. Brookings returned to quiet, but it was never the same. Trust had been broken. Along Lighthouse Trail, Amanda's former students, now adults, erected a monument for their teacher. Forever missed, never forgotten. And every September morning, as runners pass through the early light, they glance over their shoulders. Because Brookings learned something the hard way. Even in the smallest towns, even in the safest places, darkness can hide. If this story moved you, please subscribe and hit the like button. Every subscription helps us continue investigating cold cases families are still waiting to solve. Drop a comment telling us where you're watching from and which unsolved case you'd like us to cover next.